everybody. You know what it is. Episode 77, I believe. This is the Culture Punch podcast. I'm your host, Wall Street, and we're going to jump into it. Man, first of all, I want to give a shout out to a couple of people that have been sponsoring me for a really long time. Instacart. I'll leave their information down in the show notes, but Instacart is probably the perfect service that you could be using right now for delivery of groceries. I know they have grocery pickup, but they actually help deliver groceries. And I should clarify, they're not a sponsor more so as they are an affiliate link. Sorry, I was thinking of other sponsors that have been with us on this podcast before. But like I mentioned before, I cannot believe that I have not talked about this. I've been waiting for the day. I'm not even playing. I've been waiting to just jump right in. And it's about 2 weeks late now, but I wanted to wait for him. I wanted to wait to see if he was going to release an episode on his podcast, just to kind of see what he was going to talk about, what his demeanor was, kind of body language. And I almost wanted to get a read on the guy, because what do you, like, how was he? He came out and apologized, and then he did an episode like a week later. So it was like, what is he going to do? Okay, now that the apology's out of the way, is he just going to go ahead and say, all right, did it, now we're moving on to this? Or was he going to, still continue on the I'm sorry, sympathetic kind of feel bad for me vibe? Now, let me clarify. I believe his apology was sincere. It seemed like it was coming from a very sincere place. And he let a lot of people in terms of like where he was, where his inner demons were, and what he was working on, those kind of things. He didn't have to do that, but he did. And so here we are. So with that being said, again, I wanted to wait to see what he was going to do on his latest episode, which ironically, I believe is 177. So no connection there, but I don't know. It was, man, I didn't even make it 20 minutes. I'm going to tell you right now, I couldn't do it. It was like watching someone it was terrible, struggling. And it wasn't the guy's fault. You can tell. He even said it at one point around the 10, 12 minute mark. He's like, what am I talking about? Like, I'm in podcast mode and I have to, talk about these things. Like, what am I saying? I'm not in podcast mode. You can see that he was doing a podcast to do one, because that's what he's supposed to do in terms of he did his apology. Now it's time to move on with his life. But he wasn't there yet. And it was just awful to see. It was just, he was struggling. It wasn't fluent. I don't know, man. You could tell he wasn't there. It was just an awful podcast from what I saw. I had to turn it off. I couldn't watch anymore. But like I was saying before, I was waiting for the day that the Delia returned. And I cannot believe I missed the initial return. I was waiting to see, after all this time, like I'm sure most of you guys were doing as well, what he would say. Would he apologize? Would he be defensive, or would he be genuine in his message? And for those of you that didn't watch it, he was genuine. He didn't need to apologize for what he was being accused of, which was soliciting sex to underage women, because that turned out to not be the case. More on that later. But just because he didn't do what he was accused of doesn't mean he didn't necessarily do anything wrong, right? Can we agree on that? He mentioned in that video that when he began to gain recognition for his comedy, which was like his early 30s, it became easier to sleep with women. Makes sense, right? You become famous, you get known. Just seems like that would be, it would come easier for someone who's recognized. Because, he was no longer, quote, a guy trying to sleep around, but instead, women pretty much were throwing themselves at him. He didn't specifically say that, but he definitely implied it. So he no longer had interest in putting in the work, but instead he would just use his quote unquote newfound fame to sleep with women in any city that he was performing in. He said it himself. He would have something like 50 to 60 DMs for women from whatever city he was performing in at that time. And he said he responded to every single one of them. Every single one, every time. He also said that there was no more messages he also said there was way more messages than what was actually leaked. Now, he said that like in a humble way. Like, what you guys saw was nothing. There was, and it sounds cocky even when I'm saying it, but if you watch it, it really was in a humble way. It's hard to explain, but then he went back to speak about how he acted like that because he thought that's how things were, how they worked, and for those of you that can't be honest with yourselves, shame on you, because we all know that if we're just being real for a second, we all know that media and movies and a lot of other famous influences like magazines and things like that have almost programmed people to think that things are and happen because that's how it's always been. And that's how it's always going to be. Not ideal because everyone's striving for change. But that's just, if you go back to think about it, if we're being honest with ourselves as well, that's kind of always been programmed. And what I mean by that is, take his statement. That's how he thought things were. Because of television and movies, a lot, if not everyone at one point believed that when you become famous, everyone wants you. Or something to that degree, right? You have money to buy whatever. Every girl that is interested in you is probably just going to want to sleep with you for whatever reason. And you're going to sleep with them without consequence. Or so you think. There's no consequence. You're invited to the most outlandish parties with enough drugs to make even the cartel jealous, among other things, I'm sure. I'm leaving out some pretty important expectations or guesses or theories to what people think famous people go through, or what's expected, or what's the normal, or, whatever it is, whatever you're comfortable calling it. But that's just simply not true, though. Just like the Freemasons, I think there are levels to this stuff, though. He got to experience a fraction of fame on the scale of Hollywood as a whole. And that taste allowed him to think, and he said this, I'm not speculating. He said he believed being honest with these women about his intentions pretty much gave him a pass to be direct about sex and nothing else. Is that wrong? A lot of you can say he was being honest in his intentions, so anything that happened afterwards was consensual. And I think that's where that argument is. But from a morale perspective, it's not right to treat women, individuals, humans like that. Even if you're famous, even if you're honest about your intentions or whatever the case is it right morally? No, of course it's not. And I think that's where he was wrong. But again, I'll get into that. I want to keep on my thought train before I lose it. But put yourself in his position, though. After so long of operating like that, how can any human being see otherwise unless something life-changing happens? Which in this case it did. He said he was headed for exactly this, actually. It's exactly what he said. He said, I was heading for this. People to call him out on his treatment of others. And I know the initial story was about the underage women, but as of right now, we haven't seen any truth to that. The only thing that now is one of the girls from Connecticut is suing him. So she might have something. Now, here's the kicker, okay? Here's the part where, in his first apology where he said it was consensual, it was, I did everything legally. I feel like he chose his words very carefully because in Connecticut, this one girl that's suing, now she could have messages. We don't know. She can have all these messages, but they haven't been released and we haven't seen them. So as of right now, the whole sex with underage women is not true. So far, it looks like the sex that he did have was consensual. Again, morally not correct and not right, but still legally, quote unquote, and consensual. But this one individual, one woman is suing him because she claims that even though the age at Connecticut for consent is 16 and she was 17 when it happened, to the rest of the United States or the majority of the United States, that's still wrong. Like for us growing up here, we know that 18 anything 18 and over is legal. 18 and over. And even playing with fire that close is a little, if you're in your late 30s, it's like, and that's another hard one. Because there's a lot of guys out there that will go as young as they can without crossing that barrier of underage to either prove something to themselves, or that's how they're wired, or society tells them that they get young women. For a lot of you out there, you're not going to like the way it sounds, but guys will brag about getting young all the time. I'm not talking about underage. I'm talking about actual, just 18, 19, in that range. Again, that's playing really close to the fire. When you're in your late 30s, that's just, it borders, man, because you could have had a kid right out of high school. You're now sleeping with a girl that could be your own kid's age, which, now he's got a kid. Before, at that time, he didn't. So maybe he didn't understand. A lot of people don't, but still, it's like, man, you're like almost 40 and you're playing with these little girls, right? Again, he chose his words carefully. Legally, sure, it was legal in the Connecticut, but here's the other kicker. She might have messages and they're going into a civil case. There's less evidence needed in order to win a civil case. It'll be more like she's going to sue him. He's probably going to end up paying some money. And then the big question becomes, is he done in Hollywood? But before I answer that, let me rewind and tell you what I was going to say. The other kicker is that he could be indicted on other charges if that civil case or something with that turns out to be true. If he indeed was reaching out to a girl that was 17. By the way, what I mean by reaching out is he was soliciting nudes. He was telling her to send him nudes. Now you're talking about state lines. Whatever state he's in, if they don't have that same law as Connecticut, which I'm sure they don't, he could get charged on, because even though the law for her in her home state is she's abiding by that, him in a different jurisdiction, a different state, having to apply by now those state laws would have been committing a crime. So he could get indicted on those charges. It can go many ways. It can go that far. It can just stop at the sue. But again, if they want to pursue it, they could, because ultimately, if she wins a civil case, they can almost try him or at least go after him for that in whatever state he happened to be at the time. Because again, he's a performer, comedian, so he travels. But imagine that. Imagine thinking you did. See, it's hard to even go into it, because come on, bro, like 17, come on, man. She's underage. She's still developing. She's like, the way I look at it is at 17, a lot of young women are doing high school party stuff, or having butterflies because they love the most popular guy, or they love the good athlete, or the smart kid, or whoever it is you like. Right now, I'm just stereotyping, but whoever you like, doesn't matter. Young women at that age are starting to still, or not starting, but still get those butterflies and are still trying to figure out what love is. Now take the Leah coming in. Imagine what he can do as far as wrecking her, just wrecking her world. Even though he treated her like a piece of meat, even though he's honest and she did it, according to this, he could have possibly taken her virginity. Throw that into the mix. Throw that into the mix and say, wow, her virginity, really? Now you really did just take something from someone that you can never give back, and she'll never get back. She could look at it, one or two ways. Oh, I slept with a celebrity, or it wasn't special. And how many of us have that story, right? Where your first time isn't special. And that's the sad part for her, is that she has to go through that. And in her case, or his case, it was like, I did it legally. Like, come on, man, you shouldn't be playing with no one at 17. So that's again the kicker. Now, the question is he done in Hollywood? I don't know. Like I said, I'll get into that. But anyway, people are missing the real point, which is he was empty. He was searching for something and thought treating women like that would change how he felt. In my opinion, he was battling inner demons. and he was wilding out. I think I've heard people consider him to be a good looking guy. I don't necessarily think so, but I don't know what his life growing up was like. He's smooth, right? It sounds like he's smooth. So, maybe that confidence, women were attracted to him. Maybe women do think he's good looking, but my point is, who knows what he was like growing up in the sense of what his luck with women was. Maybe he was one of those guys, and I know that he had said that he would work at it, and it was hard. It's just easier when he became famous in his early 30s. Like I said, it's just easy to get women to sleep with him. So maybe it was just that he didn't have the willpower to deal with just not accepting everyone that threw themselves at him. And remember, he was engaged. I mean, he's engaged now, so he was with his woman, his lady, and he was doing this. That's those inner demons, him searching for something. That's what I got from it, at least. He then goes on to say that he was being treated for sex addiction because this made him realize that he had a problem. I don't know how to take that. I've defended the guy from the beginning for the most part because I said, we don't know, nothing's come out. He's innocent until proven guilty. I really do believe in that, even though it seems to be turned around. Doesn't mean he didn't do anything wrong, again, in the sense of morally. But it's hard, man, because too many people, once they commit something, they come out with, I've been to therapy. I'm being treated for this. I found out I have a problem with blank. Come on, bro. I know sex addiction is a real thing. I understand that. I'm not on sex addiction. What I'm on is the fact that this could be an excuse to go through it. It was hard because it was sincere and genuine. So that's what I initially got from it, was that. But I think my opinion's being changed in a sense because of the noise around it. Since his apology, the girl suing, all this other stuff, you kind of start to think, okay, well, why is this happening but not that, right? I don't know. Again, the initial I took it was genuine. But I'll tell you this. I will say this. If you judge anyone, judge them for what they do when the good is taken away from them. And that tribulation begins to consume their lives, because that, I believe, is when you will see the true person. He opened up about his treatment. If he's being sincere, he let all of us in. Let's say he did. He really did. He has an issue. He has a problem. He recognized how it was a problem, or it is a problem, even after finding the women of his dreams, or the woman of his dreams, sorry. I say women, that's funny. Even after finding the woman of his dreams, the woman he wants to spend the rest of his life with. That's what he said. His fiance. He also was cheating on her the whole time. People are leaving that part out. And it's hard. A lot of people are quick to end relationships. So take it how you will, but I say good for them for working through that. And kudos to her for sticking by his side through all of this, and for the backlash and hate he's about to receive, or she's about to receive, for staying with him. And remember, he was pretty open and honest about his infidelity in his podcast apology. I mean, in detail, not to the T, but he was pretty like, I did this and I did that. And so now that has to be hard for her to hear and know that it will now forever be in the public eye. So it ain't over. People are going to scrutinize her and they're going to talk about her in the magazines. We don't know who she is, and at least I don't, like what her willpower is. This new news that's come out to say that, he could have been telling her, I did everything legally. And now it comes out that, yeah, she's 17, or she was 17. It was legal, but gross, right? And that might change her perspective. But she's going to continuously have to read these things. So it ain't over. They will be run through the mud before it gets better. So again, I say kudos to them. Kudos to her for giving them a chance and for them working through that. It's going to be hard. But again, is he done in Hollywood? Everyone, I'm sure, is going to say yes, he's done, especially if this turns out to be true, that 17-year-old, he's done. I say no, I don't think so at all. Let me tell you why. I think Hollywood in the sense of, well, not even Hollywood just likes stars. That's it. Louis C.K. is beginning to make his way back into comedy. He's a little bit older though. Louis C.K. is a little bit older, so he could be, not as funny as he used to be, things like that. So there can be other factors that contribute to why he may die down or never recover from this. D'Elia is still fairly young. I think he's in the prime of his comedy. He's starting to come into his own where he's attracting more audiences. Now there's going to be a lot of people that turn away from him. Absolutely. I understand that. But in the sense of Hollywood, if he can get his stand-up career back and running, Hollywood will be closely following that, and they'll follow and they'll bring him back. I don't think that he might just be the guy that plays random kind of comedic roles as opposed to like a serious guy like he did in season 2 of You, which turned out to be very ironic that was the case and kind of freaky, right? But again, a lot of people say he is done. I'm going to say absolutely not, because I think Hollywood has a short memory because he's not solely fixed on Hollywood. I think he can venture out into other things to bring his name back. It's just my opinion. I mean, take Shia LaBeouf, right? He pretty much was done in Hollywood with his career, with the things he said, the things he had done. I'm not famous anymore, brown bag, all this other stuff wilding. And then he got back to his passion, which was like indie films and writing and directing and kind of being behind the scenes. And yeah, like he did those things. And then his work started to come through. Peanut Butter Falcon, Honey Boy. Like you start to see these roles that he's doing. So he's making his way back, whether he likes it or not. He's making his way back. But he shows us his range of acting. It won't be long before he starts making blockbuster films again, if he chooses. My point is that Hollywood will now they'll look to him again. That's just what happens. That's what's going to happen. I think D'Elia the same thing. Everyone's going to say, yeah, he's done. I don't think so. I think it's easy to say that, and it's easy to believe it. Absolutely, it's easy to believe it. But is he done? I don't think so. Not even close. Again, my opinion. I think that if all he has to do is continue with his career in comedy, and he'll be in Hollywood again. Now, he was just breaking into it. Again, Freemasons, there's levels, right? He was just breaking into it. He's not gonna, I don't think he'll reach where he would have gotten if this didn't come out, but I think that he'll, again, play small comedic roles where he will be in the screens. You'll see him. He'll be playing like Brian Callen type roles where he just kind of guest appears in weird movies as a funny guy and then he's gone, right? Will Sasso kind of films. But speaking of Brian Callen, in Brian Callen's case, for those of you that don't know, he also has returned. But the difference with him, nothing was ever proven. The allegations came out about it, something that happened over 21 years ago, and he didn't shy away from it. He didn't. D'Elia's case, they told him to go away, and he went away, and he said one thing, and then he was quiet for a whole year. Quiet. Brian Callen immediately came out and said, absolutely not. No way. And he never wavered on that. Regardless of what people told him, they said, hey, chill. He said, no, absolutely not. Something that happened over 21 years ago? How can you prove that something happened after so much time has passed? You know what I'm saying? It seems like too much. I'm leaving out pretty important I'm sorry. I'm leaving out the fact that he didn't have to, he wasn't forced. He made the decision, but he really didn't have to disappear the way he did. He kind of made that decision. He got canceled in a sense, but without admission to guilt, without proof, without facts, without evidence, with absolutely nothing. So that means that they had to remove him from his podcast, from the public eye, from comedy clubs, which again, it sucks because at the end of the day, this is what he said. He said, I'm trying to think what he said. He said something along the lines of, they want to end you. something like that. I remember. He said at the time of that I'm doing this podcast, even Callan is just rumors, speculation, just rumors. Nothing has been proven. And unlike D'Elia, he immediately came out and said, absolutely not. He stared cancel culture right in the eye and said, not today, mother. Now you get it. But because of the allegations, he got his sponsors pulled, and they almost pulled shop sponsors. I don't know, for those of you that don't know, for the fighter and the kid. We recently found out that Callan was the one who pulled out to ensure that his boy, that the sponsors would stay and wouldn't pull out. So they were also going to pull Schaub's sponsors, like, hey man, we can't be associated with that. We're going to pull out. Callan, being Brian Callan, said, no, we're not going to do that. I'll leave the show. That way you stay on, keep doing it. I'll leave the show and you'll keep your sponsors, make your money. I'm not going to take food off of your plate. Because he didn't want Schaub to be affected by those quote unquote rumors. So he essentially did what he thought would protect him. And guess what? It did. But this is the other thing he said, but the fact that cancel culture wanted to erase the man from history over rumors. Is that not troubling to you guys? The fact that, again, you're guilty and then you need to be proven innocent. I was watching The Staircase on Netflix, for those that don't see it, and Michael Peterson said something, or no, it could have been Rudolph, his attorney, but he said, you hear not guilty in court. You don't hear innocent. They don't ever do that. You never get proven innocent. You're either guilty, not guilty, or you create reasonable doubt. And that really stuck with me because I'm like, man, I've never actually really thought about that. And in this case, with cancel culture trying to erase him over rumors, that's what it is. It's not, he's not guilty. He's either guilty one way or another, or he's not going to be guilty. But he won't be innocent. He'll never be innocent because why? Someone said something, someone spoke up. So there has to be some kind of truth to it. It doesn't make sense to me. It seems like it would be something you'd speak up about. And I'd mentioned this when it came out, and Callan, one of his accusers, he said that he still saw her afterwards. He would get her roles and she was chipper and happy. But all of a sudden, she threw him under the bus. But one of the things that Callan said out, he said it himself. He said, when you cancel someone, cancel culture, in retrospect, in essence, what they're doing is they're not wanting them to be able to work again. And he said, therefore, ripple effect. They can't feed their families, their kids, and ultimately end up homeless. It seems dramatic, but that's, I think, when cancel culture becomes satisfied. Oh, you should never work again. Not working is not going to bring any money, is not going to bring food, and essentially just going to struggle. And as a whole, that's the message. And I don't believe the internet thinks things through most of the time, but it's the internet. But for someone's life to be ruined over rumors, something that hasn't been proven, is beyond. I still can't believe that's a thing. So 2020 being over, I'm hoping that whole cancel culture thing is just gone, done. We don't need that anymore. Not to the extreme that it was. Now, with Weinstein and Epstein, those guys, that's a whole different level. You're affecting people. It's a whole different level. In D'Elia's case, you're trying to cancel someone for everything without looking at evidence or facts. It's just speculation, and you want to believe what everyone says. Oh, if they said it, it must be true. And you can't think like that. You still have to think under the guidelines of the law, which is innocent until proven guilty. And that's been lost. But again, I'm sure there are people out there that just want to see the world burn. Hit me with a comment for those of you that know where that reference is from. But it's one thing to have things proven about you, and then there's also things that are inexcusable and absolute reasoning to cancel someone. There's There are those things, like I mentioned, Weinstein, Epstein, but rumors? We're talking about rumors? Rumors? Really? Rumors? Not facts, but rumors? Okay, sorry. I felt like I got stuck in one of those infinite time loops. Ooh, shake it off. Okay, yeah. No, I'm good. I'm good. Rumor? No, I'm just messing with you guys. But no, really, like, how do you guys feel about it? How do you feel that cancel culture's kind of taken these things? How do you feel about them coming back when they decided to come back? Is it the right time? Is it never right time? Should they have always stayed under a rock? Or like now that more things are coming out, are you guys more inclined to believe that they might be innocent? Or are you guys more inclined to believe the latter, which is, I guess I shouldn't say the latter. It really is what everyone believed from the get-go. Immediately once it came out, that's what it was. That was the belief with it. And there was never anything else. Never anything else. So again, I don't know. What do you guys think? I'd love to hear what you guys think, what you guys' thoughts on it are. I know not everyone's going to agree with my opinion. I understand that. But I think that you have to take in consideration what I said there at the end is you canceling someone, essentially you want them never to work again, especially when they're in the entertainment business. So that's their job. That's their livelihood. I'm not saying we have to forgive people, because there's people out there that are evil and will do evil things to get ahead and just ruin people's lives. Understandable. I'm siding with you guys on that one. Yes, we don't need people like that. I don't want people like that to prosper. But if we don't have all the evidence, all the facts, and we're looking at it one-sided, and we're not patient until we find out the whole story, how can we be proud of ourselves for doing that to an individual and his family? And in Delia's case, his newly found family. You know, he's engaged now. He's got a kid that's 1 year old. And a lot of you are going to say he should have never cheated. I get that. But that still shouldn't stop him from having a life with his family, with his kid. He's never going to outrun this. But if he's innocent, he should be able to overcome it. At least continue to make his way back to the path and where he was in terms of success. And we should not look at him differently prior to 2020 if indeed these are not true. We need to take that into consideration if he's found innocent or just turns out to not be true. We got to get that bad taste out of our mouths. And that's what I think is going to be hard for a lot of people. And that's where I say the internet doesn't think about those things, because realistically, once it's out there, now that it's out there, once it's out there, are we really thinking differently? I don't know. It's a hard one. And I think people are always going to see him like that, in that light, especially when they go back and they watch old things like You, season 2, in that creepy, unfortunate role. It's tough, man. Kellen is different. He went on Get Some podcast with what's his name? I want to say Greg Owens. Doesn't sound right. Anyway, he's on Get Some podcast. Anyway, he went on there and was pretty much like, yeah, no, absolutely, man. He's like, I didn't do anything, so I'm going to fight this. And now I'm starting to make my way back and this and that. And, you know, it was a nice vacation or whatever, but he didn't have a problem. He didn't have a sex addiction. He didn't have all these things, but he had to go away. Yeah, at the end of the day, he probably feels good about his decision because he made the decision to go away, as opposed to being or feeling like he was forced. But in a way, he was, man. He was forced because they were going to pull his boy Shab's sponsors. So he had to leave. So Shab's had all these guys for a year. And it's funny, I haven't actually watched The Fighter and the Kid all year. I saw the 2 episodes that followed after Brian Callen allegations and he left. And then I saw the one he returned. But in between there, I kind of stopped. There was a golden age where I think Theo Von, even King and the Sting with Theo Von and Shab was good. And I think that to me is faded. It's hard for me to watch Theo now. I can watch clips. I can't listen to a whole podcast. I could never really listen to a whole congratulations podcast from D'Elia, but some of those clips were entertaining. But I can sit there and listen to The Fighter and the Kid. I can sit there and listen to Joe Rogan. And I think those are the ones that kind of stand out from the rest and continue to prosper. So the fact that people actually tried to cancel D'Elia, ripple effects. I'm sorry, Callan, ripple effects to Shab and the sponsors and the show and what they built and, so on and so forth, whatever. But again, let's wait for justice to take its course and see what happens. If it's innocent, let's move forward. If it's guilty, and we'll address it, right? But let's not jump to conclusions and be upset that these people are returning and trying to make a living again to feed their families. It's my opinion. I hope you got your dose of culture. Thank you guys for tuning in. You can follow us. I'll leave all the links down in the show notes, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Let me know in the comments or reach out to me where that line was where people just want to see the world burn. I'll be impressed if you guys know that one. It's pretty famous, but it'd be nice to know who's out there. Thank you guys for tuning in, and that's it.